It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome to Who Runs This Park, Park Enthusiast segment, where we expand our universe and knowledge of experiences in the outdoors and at national parks through conversations with highly regarded and respected individuals in the outdoor world. As always, Who Runs This Park aims to be a catalyst for inspiration, exploration, and appreciation of our world's natural beauty. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Who Runs This Park, Park Enthusiast segment. Today, we're diving into the story of Pitt Grewe, a lifelong outdoor enthusiast and leader in the world of recreation and public lands. Pitt has dedicated his career to expanding access to the outdoors, from serving as Utah's Director of Outdoor Recreation to his current role as Head of Social and Environmental Impact at AllTrails. Whether he's working to connect trail users with land managers, managing grants to support outdoor communities, or championing recreation as an economic driver, Pitt's passion for wild places shines through. But his love for the outdoors runs far deeper than his career. He grew up in a household where the rule was simple: get outside by 8 a.m. or get a long list of chores. That early foundation led to a lifetime of adventure, from whitewater kayaking to backcountry skiing, and a mission to inspire others to experience the transformative power of nature. I'm excited to hear about Pitt's work at AllTrails, his time shaping outdoor policy in Utah, and talk about everything going on in the public land world, including the good, the bad, and the ugly. Let's jump in, Pitt. Welcome to Who Runs This Park, Park Enthusiast Edition.
Hi, Maddie. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. A way I love to start the questions, and then we'll dive into some more unique questions to your experience, or the way I love to start the interviews is by understanding a crazy outdoor experience. I think it's just a fun way to kind of get people hooked and be dreaming about what their next adventure could be.
Yeah, I've definitely had lots of experience and fun adventures outdoors. I don't want to start the podcast off with the scary ones or the terrible ones, but I have had some of those with some accidents and rescues and things like that. And those always are crazy and things you think back to all the time. But I also have a reputation, and if you ask any of my friends that have been involved in this, of coming up with things that got the name called Pitt Ventures. And so these are
Ooh.
typically adventures that there's a lot more unknown than probably expected. So, this is anything from getting dropped off 30 miles from my parents' house and just saying, all right, we got to find our way back home over this mountain range and let's go for it. And there's a lot of type 2 fun, suffering, things like that. Lots of bushwhacking. We've been on a bike packing trip that ended up literally being a bike packing trip because our bikes were on our backs most of the time because the trails weren't rideable. So, I love looking at maps and saying, I wonder what it looks like out there in real life and going for it. And sometimes you find perfect adventure, and sometimes you find a little bit more of a suffer fest. But that's what Pitt Ventures have become known as, and I'm glad I have some friends that are still willing to go outside with me on some of these. So.
And how did the name originally get coined? Was it after one of those, or did it just happen over time?
Yeah, I think it was after a couple of those where, some of these friends that gave me a chance and then maybe a second chance, and they're still going with me, but they'll, now they say, like, is this a Pitt venture or is this like a real trip that we're going on, or a real experience? And so, it's just got that reputation of being a little bit less fun potentially.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit more type 2 fun sufferfest type scenario. That's awesome.
But I love it because, again, I think that's the real excitement about adventure, that unknown. And you can find those everywhere in your backyard. You don't have to travel the world for that or anything. You can literally find it in the range, closest to your home, or in a national park nearby. You don't have to be doing the same thing everybody else is doing. You can put together these things that are, pretty exciting and definitely bring a lot of memories. And I think that's the important part about it.
Yeah, stretch your skill set also.
Yeah.
That's great. I do want to acknowledge it's kind of we're talking on May 4th, and it's kind of a weird time to be talking about the public land space. Obviously, I
It's
adore
March
the
4th.
public lands. Oh, yeah, not March, not May. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. It is March 4th. So it's a weird time to be talking about public lands and national parks and all of that. I'd love to kind of start off and then we'll dig into your experience working in the public lands, both at AllTrails and for the state of Utah and all of that. But given your connection to folks in this world, can you share a little bit more about the sentiment of everything going on?
I think overall, I'm having these conversations daily with friends that work in this space, whether that's in the nonprofit space or for the federal government or for state government. And the overall sentiment is, just hold on
Yeah.
through this chaos and
Yeah.
let's see what we can do, what the outcome will be. Obviously, it's scary for many people.
Yeah.
Many people have lost their jobs or their careers that they've devoted so much time to. So that is definitely scary, and we don't want to take that for granted. That people are really struggling through all of this. And so, but ultimately, I think there's always that hope that the American people value their public lands
Yeah.
more than anything. That's why we live in America. That's why people move out west, is because we have such expansive federal public lands, right? And they want to access that and they want to go enjoy it and they want to connect with it. And so overall, no matter what's happening at the White House or in Congress or whatever, the American people will you know, stand up for what they love most. And I think public lands top that list for
Yeah.
so many people, no matter what side of the aisle you sit on or anything. Public lands really do are at the top of the list for so many priorities for people
Yeah.
in this country.
Yeah, I think we've seen that for sure. I guess taking it on a more personal level, how did public lands, outdoors, I think of them as one and the same because the public lands are places where we really get to experience the outdoors. So, how did your love grow for our public lands?
I don't know. I mean, it wasn't like ever planned in that
Yeah.
way, I don't think. I was lucky enough to grow up in northern Utah. I grew up in Logan, small town. My parents' house was literally cross a golf course and then you were into Forest Service land on the other side
Wow.
of it. So, access to Logan Canyon, which became my playground, and the mountain behind my parents' house. So, like you mentioned earlier, my dad and my mom were very adamant that we get outside, that we use our energy, that we don't spend time, sitting in the basement or watching TV or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, we were just kicked out of the house at 8 a.m. every day. They go get into a little bit of trouble or go explore or whatever. And we do that, whether I was riding bikes around town or riding up the canyon or anything. And got as I got older and my world expanded a little bit into what I was comfortable exploring, and maybe I got a car and so I could go a little bit further and all of that, you realize how much there is out there to explore and to experience in the outdoors. I was raised skiing, every weekend we skied as a family. And then in the summertime, it was, going on picnics, going on hikes, going fishing, whatever it is to get outside and explore nature around us. And then in the summertime, also, like a lot of our family vacations were to national parks or
Mm,
national forests. And so I think I connected with that at an early age because I was happy running around, getting dirty, throwing rocks in the creek, fishing, whatever it was. Like, I realized pretty early on that, like, this puts me in a good mood and I like doing it, even
yeah.
if it is hard. And so I want to pursue that, forever. And like I said, then my world opened up. I had lots of opportunities, from skiing to kayaking to rock climbing, all
Mm,
within 10 minutes of my house,
yeah.
essentially. And I luckily had mentors in that community that helped me to get into that. My parents aren't whitewater enthusiasts or kayakers. They're not rock climbers at all, but because I was raised in a community that had people that were engaged in this, I was able to find mentors to help me learn and to grow in that, and then also find others to participate in that with me. So, yeah, I think that appreciation, no matter what, every time we went out, my dad would always, talk to us that what are now leave no trace principles, whether they
Well,
were
yeah.
called leave no trace principles when I was a kid or not, or anybody's referencing leave no trace as an organization. It was always do better, leave it better. And I think that sparks from my dad. My dad's kind of the classic story of, he grew up in Chicago, in the suburbs of Chicago, downtown. As soon as he got to college, he's like, I want to study forestry. He moved out west, studied
Mm,
forestry at Utah State University, and stayed in Utah from there
wow.
on out. And again, all those lessons that then he passes on, to us, they really stick and have kind of made me who I am now.
Yeah. Was it your one of your first jobs out of college was working in the canyons in Park City?
Yeah, yeah. So I kind of grew up in the ski industry. My dad, even though he studied forestry, he actually has worked in the ski industry most of his life. He sold snowcats to ski resorts all over the western United
Whoa.
States.
So
Yeah.
unique. That's
So
cool.
he's a groomer and, maintaining the ski runs at places and then selling the vehicles for that as well and working at ski resorts and everything else. So I started in early, as early as I possibly can, working at Beaver Mountain Ski Resort, the small little family owned resort near my house. And then when I graduated college, I had the opportunity to go work for a large ski resort, which was the Canyons at the time. They were the largest ski resort in Utah at the time.
Oh,
And
wow.
super, super cool experience for me because I think my biggest takeaway there, I did that for about 4 years and I would supervise about 120 lift operators, all different lifts of different terrain and everything else. And the cool part about that was a big chunk of the staff were from other countries. They would come over
Mm-hmm.
and work for a season. And, it, it was inspiring because you would see these people come over and make next to no money and try to live in a gateway community like
Yeah.
Park City, Utah, which is really expensive
Very
to live
expensive.
in.
Yeah.
And they didn't care. They were there because they were passionate about skiing or snowboarding and being in the mountains
Mm,
and that experience each day. And I felt lucky to be a part of that, right? Like I got to ski every day and be out there and just kind of share the passion and feel the stoke of like, all right, when it snowed, everybody's fired up to be here. We're ready.
yeah.
It wasn't about that they wanted to serve the visitors from other places. It wasn't about that, even though that was part of their job, it wasn't
Yeah.
about that they loved ski lifts for any reason,
Yeah.
but it was that they got to stand outside, watch it snow, be there as it was
Yeah.
happening and experience the mountains. And, when you're surrounded by 120 of those people that are passionate about that, like it's a great place to work for sure.
Yeah. I mean, some of my favorite moments skiing are when it's snowing and there's good music playing at the lift and you're just waiting in line, you say hi to them. They, like they can tell you're excited by the good snow conditions and yeah, there's really nothing better. So I love
It,
that you got that experience.
yeah, it's kind of funny. I think my kids laugh at me and my wife laugh at me like at a ski resort. I'll sit down on a chair now when I ski and my first comment's always like, yeah, the vibe is good here. Like
Yeah.
I can feel the vibe. And that's what I want in a ski. I don't care what conditions are doing, but if the vibe is good, like
Like
that's what makes the
that's what we
moment.
care about. Yeah, that's awesome. But so fun. What were you working seasonal jobs at that time? Because I assume in the winter, I mean in the summer they didn't have that position?
Yeah, so I do a little bit of work up there in the summer as well because we did run lifts, a very, reduced staff and things like that, but we did
Right.
run lifts in the summertime. At that same time, I was also getting a kayak school off the ground and teaching
Yeah.
whitewater kayaking as well. And so it was a good mix. I loved the seasonality of work at that stage of life, that time, a little more flexibility. And so it was great to kind of move around and do some new things throughout the year. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was super fun.
Tell me a little bit about the kayak school you built.
Yeah, so it was called Rapid Progression Kayak School. And ultimately, again, like I said, I was lucky to be raised with a great community of folks in the kayak world. I started kayaking when I was 15 years old,
Okay.
got into whitewater, took lots of terrible swims and, struggled through trying to learn how to roll and all of that. But as I got older, you know, loved it. Loved to kind of push the limits, get into running big scary whitewater, traveling around to do that. And there is so much value I see in whitewater kayaking. It's a hard sport to get into, right? It's you got to be in the right place. It takes a lot of time to learn the skills for it and to
Yeah.
progress. But at the same time, you know, it I found a community that was fantastic with friends that I have connections with today that I could never trade for anything else. Like the experiences you have, the decision making, the
Mm,
safety, the teamwork, the analyzing, decisions, all of that, the planning, the logistics, like all of that was just super helpful skills that I thought were super valuable in my life and
Yeah.
translate into other aspects of my life. So an opportunity came along where we realized, hey, there's nobody really teaching kayaking in the state of Utah or in northern Utah on a regular
Hmm.
basis. So we'd get asked all the time by friends like, hey, could you take me and teach me how to roll? Or I'd love to go down the river. And we thought, you know what? We should formalize this. So we all
Yeah.
got trained, got our certifications for teaching whitewater and safety aspects of it. And a small group of us, four of us, started it, doing it in Salt Lake City, Ogden, and Logan. And we were, teaching classes on the regular. And we had roll sessions in pools, and we'd take people down for the river for the first time, and we'd take kids out, and it was awesome to see somebody nail their roll even in a pool the first time when they realized like I was upside down and now I'm upright, and I did that without coming out of my kayak. Again, like those opportunities for the vibe is good, and like the biggest high fives and
Yeah.
everything else go
Yeah.
around. It's just, I still do it. Like, even when friends call me today and say, hey, we have a class, can you like jump in and teach? Even though I haven't been teaching for years, like I love it. I love being there to
Yeah.
see people experience that. And then they start asking questions about, I want to go run this river. What do you know about it? What can I help with? And then, again, like you can see me smiling now. I just get
Yeah.
psyched helping
Yeah.
people to
It's
get
so
outside and
awesome.
experience that. It's so
Yeah.
fun. So,
You're reminding me of when I was in college, I did we had like an outdoor program, and I grew up in Austin. That was my exposure to the outdoor world. And we did this thing where we went down to the Gulf and kayaked out to an island. And so we had to practice rolls ahead of time. So it wasn't like running a river or anything. I haven't really done any of that. But I remember you're just making me think of like the skirt that you have around, and then like practicing the rolls in the pool at the rec center and stuff like that. And yeah, it's a very cool feeling being like, okay, I'm upside down. Like I just need to stay calm and I can actually get out of this situation.
yeah. And moving water is incredible. I can sit and watch water moving in all its forms all day long. Whether that's a river, whether that's waves in the ocean, water water fascinates me, and I
Yeah.
think it's
Yeah.
super fun to just be a part of that.
Yeah. I just love, yeah, like you said, you're just smiling. I love kind of the passion you can tell from just your face and the way you talk about skiing and water and all of those things is really awesome. Before we dive into your work at the state of Utah and then at AllTrails, we talk about national parks a lot on this podcast. So I'd love to hear about what your favorite national park is and then a memorable experience you've had in a national park.
Favorite national
I know
park
it's tough.
is so hard. I'll share a couple,
That's allowed.
if that's okay. So I started also rock climbing when I was a teenager, young,
Cool.
and probably 12 or 13 years old. And I remember going to the Tetons soon
Mm,
after learning how to rock climb and seeing the Grand Teton, and just that instantly on the bucket list, like I'm gonna go
yeah.
climb that mountain. Like
Yeah.
that's the pinnacle. And I have a lot of connections with the Tetons. My mom worked there in college, and she's very passionate about it, and so we'd go often and whatnot. Anyway, I got to climbing. I climbed the Grand Teton, but it wasn't until years later that I took my wife up the Grand Teton,
Mm,
and we both summited together on a perfect morning with two other friends, and just an incredible experience to be there with my spouse and with some of my best friends,
yeah.
and be on top of the Grand Teton and enjoy it, and the accomplishment. So that's pretty special. The park I probably love the most, and I don't know, this might shock people a little bit, but I feel a deep connection to Yellowstone, and I
Mm,
love Yellowstone National Park. Again, a lot of our family vacations growing up were up to Yellowstone,
yeah.
and I don't know what it is. I think it's just such a magical environment, the wildlife and plant life and the formations. And so I have a distinct morning. I think it was on a 4th of July morning. I was up
Oh,
in
amazing.
Yellowstone, and we were hiking, and about 6 miles in on this hike, we come over a ridge and saw two grizzly bears just
Oh my
digging
gosh.
roots. They were off in the distance. They were,
Yeah.
plenty far away, but they're just in the meadow digging and feeding, and was able to sit there and watch them for an hour. Just sit there and watch them feed and dig, and just a majestic animal. It's just
Wow.
fascinating to watch. So I think that whole greater Yellowstone area, so Tetons, Yellowstone, probably take my heart as the favorite. But then I will add one more experience that, I've had the opportunity for each of my kids as they've gotten to age. I have 3 kids. And so 2 of them up to this point, at a certain age, I take them down and we do the subway, top down subway in Zion National Park,
Okay.
which is like canyoneering, a little bit of rappelling. You have to swim through some pools. And of course,
Whoa.
like the famous, subway shot where you see that beautiful canyon or whatever. And it's hard. It's a big day,
Yeah.
especially for kids. And so
Yeah.
to see them push through it as well, a little bit of a type 2 fun by the end,
Yeah.
but also to experience the majesty of the canyons of Zion
Wow.
is pretty incredible. So I love that experience, taking my kids and their friends and experience the subway or the canyons in Zion. So
So
sorry,
is
I
that
answered
different?
3.
No, I love that. Is that different than the Narrows? Because I'm
It
only
is. Yep.
okay. So the
Yeah.
Narrows is like the hike through the canyon, kind of
Yeah,
in
the
like
the Narrows is like there at the top of the canyon, the canyon road that you drive up
right.
Main Zion Canyon. The subway is kind of on the Kolob Terrace Road, so it's kind of a little bit different, and it's a big hike across sandstone, then you rappel down or you get down into the canyon and you do some rappels, and it's like more of a canyoneering experience coming down the creek, and then you got to hike out of that canyon at the end of the
That's
day.
great.
So
That's
yeah,
amazing. Kind of on the topic of Zion, you actually became a board member of Zion Forever recently. So first off, congratulations.
no, thank you.
But can you share a little bit more about that and what that role entails?
Yeah, so I got connected with the Zion Forever project when I was working at the state. And I know we'll jump into that a little bit of just kind of
Yeah.
helping them as an organization. Zion is one of the most popular national parks. It
Mhm.
is a gem for sure. It also is one of the, big economic drivers for the state of Utah and
Yeah.
that part of Utah. And so with that, there was these organizations, Zion Forever Project being one of them, but many people know about these cooperating associations, whether that's the Yosemite Conservancy,
Yeah.
Grand Teton Park Foundation, like all of these that are really key to supporting so much that go on in our national parks, whether that's with funding, with staffing, with just helping with interpretation and education and all of that. So
Yeah.
Zion is a place that I love so much and have spent a lot of time down there. And I've helped participate in many projects when I was working at the state with the Zion Fair project and the Zion superintendent. So when the opportunity came up, I was really excited to
Yeah.
somehow bring, I guess how I sold myself to them is like I'll bring the stoke. Like I will bring
Yeah.
the excitement around this. I mean, that's kind of the value I can offer is I'm
Yeah.
excited, I'm passionate, like let me help be a part of this. And I think you have interviewed Superintendent Brady Baugh,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I have.
One of the most incredible men I've ever met.
Yeah.
If like the work he does down there and the way he leads his staff, really fantastic. And so I will say it was a little bit selfish that like, yeah, I want to participate on this board because I want to hang out with Jeff a little bit
Yeah.
more as much as I can. So
You're like, "I like him. I wanna see how
he's
I can
just
be in more rooms with him."
he's just so nice. And I had an opportunity when I worked for the state. He was so gracious. One day I went down there and we rode e-bikes up the canyon in
Oh,
Zion
cool.
and like just him and I and a couple other staff members and just to experience the park in that way and from his perspective and hear his love for it like that's great. And I know Jeff's not unique in that. The people that run the Zion Forever project, the residents of Springdale, like all of them, like to hear their passion for that canyon and that park. That's why I want to serve on this board is to like engage with those people because again, it's super cool to to see how important that national park is in the lives
Yeah.
of these individuals.
Yeah. Kind of you said, like, how you will bring the stoke. It's kinda like making sure the vibe is good, like you did on the chairlifts, you know? I
Yeah,
see a
hopefully,
nice
hopefully.
thread between those seasons of your life, so I love that. It's a great segue into your work at for the state of Utah. So just kind of to clarify, so you actually spent time, and these are a mouthful, but as the director of the Utah Division of Outdoor Reaction for the state's Department of Natural Resources, and also as the director of the Office of Outdoor Recreation for the Governor's Office of Economic Development. And I'd
Yeah.
love to understand kind of how they were similar, how they were different.
So, all right, ready to dive deep here. We're gonna get into. There's probably gonna be like all kinds of state and government speech here, so I apologize. But when I started as the director of the Office of Outdoor Recreation within the Governor's Office of Economic Development.
Right.
It was the first office of outdoor recreation formed in the country.
Yeah.
Utah and then Colorado was shortly behind us. And this is like 2009, 2010 that was formed. So I was the third director of that office. And ultimately, or I guess originally, it was designed to help support the outdoor recreation industry and economy in the state. That's why I was in the Office of Economic Development. And so, yeah, they were supporting all the businesses that were moving to Utah. Utah has a huge, cohort of outdoor industry businesses
Yeah.
here and employees. It was there to support, the guides and outfitters and, kind of participate with the tourism industry as well and help represent outdoor recreation is a huge driver in the economy of Utah. So that was fantastic. That's kind of why I came into it, because I had been working in the outdoor industry my whole career. I had a lot of connections with those businesses and brands and experiences as well. Well, while I was there, actually, right when I started is when COVID
Yeah.
began. And so we all know that. I'm not going to rehash what happened to the
what COVID
outdoors,
was.
what COVID was and how it impacted the outdoors.
Yeah.
But, basically, right, huge impact on the outdoors, how people are experiencing the outdoors, more people getting outside, all of that. And a lot of people are coming to the state to say, hey, how can you help support this? We need to better educate people and reach out to them about responsible recreation. We need to help these gateway communities. We need to help our federal partners that are managing these lands, all of this. So about a year and a half into my role there, the governor and the legislature decided to evolve the the Office of Outdoor Recreation into its own division and put it under the the Department of Natural Resources.
I
So it's
see.
much more of a focus on, hey, how can you help in management of outdoor recreation around the state? Because we did have a state parks office, but they were managing the state parks, and the reality is we have so many federal lands and other lands and community lands and outdoor recreation. People don't care if they're at a state park, at a national park, or whatever. They just want to recreate, right?
Yeah.
And so, how do we better support that, as opposed to saying, "Not our problem. That's a national park, so they
Or
have
yeah,
to
like
deal with
U.S.
it."
Forest Service. So like talk to
Totally.
them or whoever.
Yep. So it was really great. Kind of an evolution of that. We took on few different responsibilities of managing all aspects of kind of the mission forward and the strategy around all different types of outdoor recreation. This is from the ski industry to the trails world to the motorized world, you name it.
Yeah.
Every activity possible in the state of Utah, we were talking to those user groups and we were talking to people involved in those and the communities involved in those as well. So, yeah, that's kind of the difference
Cool.
involved. That now it is a very strong division. It was fun to be a part of that kind of transition because when I started, there was 4 of us in the office that were doing that, and now the division is 40 strong, and people are
Wow.
managing all kinds of programs and
Cool.
anything from helping kids get outdoors to helping educate motorized recreationists to helping then support grants and funding
Yeah.
and everything else. So it's really grown and been really exciting.
And it makes sense that it was kind of a transition from like one department to the other. Cause I was like, well, there's similar groups. That's cool. But can you share a little bit? You mentioned that it was the first office of outdoor recreation. Can you share kind of how that was established and then speak to the overall growth of those types of offices across the country?
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, it was recognition by the governor at the time, Governor Gary Herbert, to see again. This was a driver of our economy, and
Hmm.
this is why people come to Utah
Yeah.
and everything else. And so originally, like, yeah, let's support the businesses and whatever. And I think that's what a lot of states are kind of leaning on, because you want to get an office established with your state legislature or your governor. Beating that economic drum is key,
Yeah.
right? Like, all right, it drives the
It's a good
economy, is
lever.
whatever. It's a good lever for sure. And so that's what a lot of these are establishing under and kind of and getting open. It it's cool because at the same time, you know, it evolves. So like,
Hmm.
let's get it open, let's get it there. It was interesting. Like again, it was there to support the businesses, and it still does, and there's support there. But as I was getting into it, and as we got there, it was much more of a bigger picture, kind of a macroeconomic discussion, and I think that's why I was able to grow and evolve
Yeah.
because we were saying like, no, this isn't just about the businesses that create outdoor gear or outdoor experiences for people in the state of Utah. We actually did surveys and with partners to say it's the reason why people are moving here from every industry.
Hmm.
So the tech industry in Utah is booming and more businesses are here, but guess why they're choosing Utah? Because they
Because
can
of the
ride their bike on their lunch
yeah.
breaks, or they
Yeah.
can go skiing before they go into work in the morning,
Yeah.
or whatever. So actually the reason people are moving to Utah is because of the access to outdoor recreation, or they can go to a national park on the weekend or down to the BLM land or whatever it is. So it's actually driving not just the outdoor industry as an economic driver, it is like driving every sector of
Yeah.
our economy. So that was fun to kind of be a part of that evolution, and that helps also other states to kind of make the case for the economic value of this.
Right.
Not to mention then the value of just like quality of life and health and wellness and all of this that all these other states are concerned about as well. So I think uh, and don't quote me exactly on this, I guess, but I think when I started working for the state, there was 6 or 8
Hmm.
offices in other states. Like I said, Colorado, Montana, Nevada, a lot of the western states were jumping on us, and a couple more on the East Coast. And then I think today, as of today, we have 50% of the states in this country
Wow.
that have an office of outdoor recreation. So like
Wow.
kudos to the confluence of states and all these other state directors that have been pushing it, talking to their governors, talking to the state legislators.
Yeah.
And they all have a little bit slightly different mission, whether that's economic value in the industry, whether that's kind of just helping with trails and outdoor space and finding that. They've found their lever to pull,
Yeah.
and it's awesome. And together, these directors and these offices get together to continue to strategize on how they can continue to support outdoor recreation and support for our public lands, which is awesome. To see that over half of the states in the country are now prioritizing outdoor recreation, something you wouldn't even imagine, 20 years ago. So
Yeah. I mean, and kind of like what you said, the reason I've been to Utah is to ski and to recreate. So, I'm like I haven't moved out there yet, but, but, it's, I think, a similar story of why most people have visited Utah is for the outdoors that it offers.
yeah.
Uh, you shared, or I guess, can you talk a little bit about I think it was the grants that you worked on in that when you were working for the state?
Yeah. So this is probably one of my proudest accomplishments. And again, I don't want to toot my own horn too loudly, but this was incredible and
Yeah.
really came down to just being in the right place at the right time for me in this position. Like I said, starting when COVID began and the boom of the importance of outdoor recreation was a huge catalyst. And then having the right leadership in place, like our Speaker of the House at the time in the state legislature was a huge outdoor recreation proponent and held a lot of
Oh, wow.
power. Our governor's, again, always supportive of outdoor recreation, which was incredible. And so, being in the right place at the right time, the grant program had been established when I came in, the basic grant program. And this was a grant program to help build out new outdoor recreation infrastructure around the state. So
Hmm.
communities and nonprofits could apply,
Hmm.
and they'd have to have a match, the 50% match. And so they would apply and say, hey, we want to build a new trail, or we want to build a
Oh,
bike
cool.
track, or we want to build a campground on some county land or in this land, or some area, some public space that we have. We saw projects from fishing docks at local ponds to,
Cool.
again, lots of trails, lots of campgrounds, anything to help the community get outside and be healthy. So
Yeah.
it was about $8 million total. That funding came from a small portion of tourism tax, essentially, like
Oh,
hotel
cool.
tax, that was set aside, and we do that. Well, while I was there, we continued again. the help of COVID and the demand on outdoor recreation,
Yeah.
we were able to expand that program to really help more and more projects, not just for building new infrastructure, but then to help in the maintenance of old or maybe deferred maintenance type of things, to expand this into help not just locally owned lands, but also how can we help our federal partners
Mm.
in this as well. And so over just a few years of helping this, we were able to establish more funding, which is actually just a percentage of the overall sales tax in the state of Utah
Yeah.
now goes to outdoor recreation and outdoor recreation support, as well as all the registrations from motorized vehicles go to
Hmm.
help support trails for the side by sides and the OHVs and the dirt bikes and snowmobiles, all of that kind of stuff. Anyway, so many hours of work, many long discussions
Yeah.
about this, and then developing, building relationships with lawmakers and everything else, and community buy-in, to where it's now closer to 30 30 to 35 million dollars a year that the state distributes
Wow.
to communities to help with these projects,
That's
which is just
amazing.
incredible, right?
Yeah.
And again, and this is has buy-in from lawmakers and communities and voters and taxpayers, everything, to say like, yep, like this money is going to help build a trail near my home.
Like
Like,
I'm in.
I'm in, right? So,
Yeah, that's great.
um, super fun, super cool to work on. Huge learning experience for me, like how that process works
Yeah.
and how to do that. But really, it comes down to, and again, I hate to keep pointing to this, but like the stoke and like
Yeah.
getting people on board and kind of building that coalition. I
Hmm.
spent so many hours and so many days driving to communities around the state of Utah to help people catch the vision of like how
Yeah.
this is important, how this will help
Yeah.
their community, how it helps their quality of life. And again, just bring the stoke, talk about it. Again, public lands, outdoor recreation really is a lot easier to sell than any other political aspect of
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
life, because everybody can get behind it and appreciate it. So
Yeah.
it really is pretty fun to work on a project like that and see it impacting communities
Yeah.
the way it did.
I mean, that's the dream, is that you work on stuff that impacts people in a positive way. And so that's really awesome that you got to experience that.
One of the example of that is like we supported Zion Forever project that was getting money from Park Service and from Zion Forever and the community to help, build out, I don't know, I think it was 100 miles of bike trails on the
Wow.
east side of Zion, right? Just outside the gate. So now another spot for people to come when they visit Zion, they can go experience these world-class bike trails as
Hmm.
well. And then, go spend some money in Kanab or that side of Zion and
Yeah.
help that community. It's just, again, just like the collaboration and like bringing communities and the organizations together for that is so fun. It's the best part.
Well, and like you said, bridging, like having a project be able to impact a Forest Service land plus a Park Service land plus state land and like connect those things
Yeah.
is really cool and is really unique.
Yeah, and it's complex. Like it's not
Yes.
easy. Like I would be the first one to say that, like, yes, the bureaucracy of federal agencies is hard to navigate, but
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
not impossible if you are willing to put in the work and again collaborate with the private sector, with the state, with the feds, like
Yeah.
everybody. It can work. And
Yeah.
Utah's, I think, a great example of that for sure.
Yeah. That's awesome. And is the grant program the main way that you felt the Office of Outdoor Recreation supported gateway communities?
Yeah, I think there was that. And then another project we worked on while I was there was establishing a 10-year recreation, statewide recreation plan.
Oh, okay.
So most states have what's called a SORP, a statewide outdoor recreation plan.
Hmm.
It's required for a lot of federal grants and things that they get money for to help that. But we wanted to take it the next step and really step down into, how it's going to impact the communities directly, as opposed to this big overarching, like, all right, this is what we're going to do. Like, this is why outdoor recreation is important.
Yeah.
We want to step down. Like, this is what it means for Southwest Utah. This is what it means
Yeah.
for Eastern Utah. All of that. So, yeah, we along with how do we strategically spend this grant money, right? If we have more details on this. So the project that we worked on is we went throughout the state and again would gather a cohort of the user groups and the community leaders and officials and everything else, and we would have hard conversations about, hey, what are the biggest issues you deal with from a
Yeah.
recreational standpoint? Who are you working with currently? Who do you not work with? Who's cooperating? All of that. And then, one of the fun parts is we had these giant maps. Every one of these meetings we'd go to
Oh,
around the
fun.
state, we'd have these giant maps on the wall, and we'd be like, all right, go up with a pencil or a pen and mark. Like we've labeled recreation assets around the state, but we know we've missed it and we know there's a lot going on. So like mark them and let us know.
Yeah.
Because we wanted to get a full inventory of like what is available in Utah. Yeah, we know
Yeah.
there's these national parks, whatever, but we know there's campsites scattered all over the forest, and we know
Yeah.
there's trails everywhere. So like help us get a better
Wow.
inventory on this so we can better understand what people are doing. So yeah, that was like one of the you know one of the great ways, because we're engaging with the gateway communities there, whether they were to a national park or whether it's to a national forest.
Yeah.
But that was key, because these are the people that are stewarding, taking care of these places. They're dealing with the visitors. They're helping to educate people, and it was super fascinating with that. I'll use that to lead into maybe our next talking point, and
Yeah.
that's where like my conversations with AllTrails came in. So
Yeah.
while we were
Perfect
working
segue.
while we were working on that strategic plan, I reached out to AllTrails to say, hey, I know you guys have a lot of data on where people are recreating in
Whoa.
Utah. So I said, can I buy data from you? This would help with our strategic plan. We want to know where people are going, how they're using it, how many people are using it. And,
Yeah.
any data sources we can do to help with that would be fantastic. So I kind of cold outreached on LinkedIn or something.
Yeah.
Maybe maybe it was it might be just a customer service email I sent in. And the customer service team reported back like, this is a conversation you need to have with our CEO. Let me connect you. And I was like,
You're like,
great.
oh, okay. Sweet.
So at the time, I connected. Ron Schneiderman was the CEO at the time,
Yeah.
and honestly, like got on the phone with him, and we just like jammed for an hour on
Wow.
this topic, and he was super fired up and excited about it and engaged in it. And he's like, no, 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 we will not sell you data. We are not in the business of selling data. We're in the business of helping people get outside
Yeah.
and helping people have the best experience outside.
Yeah.
So at the state of Utah are trying to do this in your state. Like, how do we support?
Wow.
Couple of year, maybe a year, 18 months went on where they thought about how they could support in this. And I went back and forth with Ron a handful of times, and some of the staff at AllTrails kind of sharing my experience and kind of my insights into it. And eventually, Ron reached out and said, hey, we've done it. We've created what we're going to call the public lands program,
Mm-hmm.
right, at the time. And I said, oh, really? I got all interested and was pretty fascinated in this. And basically, the public lands program was a way to support land managers with a tool for communication and data insights.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, with all this information that AllTrails has and the reach they have, AllTrails has over 75 million users worldwide. A lot of people plan their entire trip to a national park using AllTrails,
Yeah.
right? And to find where they want to go and what they want to do. And so basically what we do is we say, all right, land managers, we want to give you power to reach our members with the
Mm-hmm.
most pertinent information. So if there's a closure, if there's an alert, if there's information about safety that they need to know, we know people are looking at AllTrails for that. So let's make sure that they get that information, because that'll help reduce injuries or emergencies, also impact on the land, everything else. So land managers can now log in, edit a trail description, put up a warning, put up a closure, all of that, and just use AllTrails as a tool to communicate to the public. Same way they would use, a sign, a social media post,
Yeah.
whatever. But this is another way to reach the public
Yeah.
in this. So that's kind of one aspect of it. The second aspect of it is, well, since you're also, land manager, obviously making our platform better and more up to date, we want to be able to, again, help out in any way we can to help them make their case.
Yeah.
So we also provide data insights to anybody that's using AllTrails. Again, this is, we're not giving specifics about users or anything like
Right.
that. We want to keep privacy very, very close, but they can see overall trends of like how many people are looking at their trails, what the most recent comments are. So what people are saying to their experience out there, and actually heat maps of where people are going. Are they following the prescribed trails? Are they going off trail? How much time are they spending on that trail? All of that kind of information. to help them, then the land manager can use that. All right, we need signage here, or we need to stick a ranger here because obviously there's questions going on and we need to
Yeah.
educate better. Maybe they're using it to go out and apply for more grants or apply for funding. And this just isn't federal partners. This is anything from, the National Park Service down to a local land trust or a Parks and Rec department, that's managing trails around a few parks and open spaces. Like
Yeah.
the system and the platform and the program works for anybody that just wants to help better educate people on those trails. So they launched
That's
that
cool.
in kind of the first stage. And then I see a job posting that comes up that says general manager of the public lands program, essentially at AllTrails.
You're
And
like,
I shot a nice email to Ron. I was like, is this something I should be interested in? And the funny thing about this, and people who have applied for a job at AllTrails will laugh about this, because they get a lot of applicants, and I'm not so he's like, yes, please apply. So I applied, and like within like a couple days, I get a rejection letter. It's like, you do not qualify. I was like, So I forwarded to Ron. I was like, I guess I'm not, I guess I don't meet the standards for this, but good luck. Let me know how I can continue to help. I was just
Yeah.
like, great. I love my position to the state. I was
Yeah.
happy,
Yeah.
whatever. And Ron was like, what? Hold on. Let me reverse that back. So
That's funny.
So then I went through, they had lots of great applicants, went through the application process, and again, working with the exec team on that, and was lucky enough to come on and really kick this program off and
It's amazing.
and figure out how to make it work. And it was still very much a work in progress, and still is, but it's awesome to be a part of something that no other company is doing to help land managers in this way.
Mhm.
And it really came back to my core belief that I learned this at the state, but I think the best route to solving a lot of the issues that we see, whether that's on public land management or recreation management, all of that, the best route is public-private partnerships.
Yeah.
It's not the total private industry's job to do it. It's not fully the public side and the government agencies to do this, or the local government or anything like that. The real successes come, and we saw this all over communities in the state of Utah, but the real successes come when private and public work together to find
Yeah.
solutions. And so now, being in the private sector, I want to be able to support these communities and help them, get through whatever issues they may run into, which, are becoming more and more apparent just recently. So
Yeah.
how can we do that?
Yeah. How has your job evolved at AllTrails? Because you said it's kind of like you kicked off the program essentially, and then you recently got your new title as head of social and environmental impact. So I guess how has it transitioned from, is that still overseeing the public lands program plus other things, stuff like that?
Yeah, so it is. It ultimately, right, the All Trails mission, as we continue to grow, continues to evolve, and our values continue to evolve. But one thing that we're always passionate about is, what we feel our role in this world is to help people discover the benefits of being outside, help them get outside, lower the barriers of entry to get out on a trail, to enjoy nature, to experience in the way that works for you.
Yeah.
Not everybody wants to go on a pit venture. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
And I get that. In fact, majority of the world probably doesn't
Yeah,
want to go on a
probably not.
pit venture, including my wife or my children. But that's fine. Like there's opportunities for everybody outside. So that's like number one mission. How do we help people get outside?
Yeah.
And then how do we make sure that the people that we are helping to get outside, we are helping to become stewards and find a connection with the spaces where they're recreating or where they're visiting. So, as that mission statement kind of evolved, and as, those values kind of evolved as AllTrails grew, the public lands program was a big part of that. And so, yes, the public lands program is still going strong. We have over 500 people, like agencies, like participating in this, and land managers or nonprofits. But what we found also is it wasn't just land managers that were interested in this. It was also these nonprofit trail advocacy groups, people doing trail work, also just other organizations that are helping kids to get outside, all of that. And so, yes, we were focused on the public lands program, but we saw like there's a lot of opportunity here to support in many different ways.
Yeah.
So in late 2024, it was like, all right, we need to have this all be kind of under one team to
Right.
help move this mission forward and be strategic in how we're really making an impact in the world. So the impact team was formed. It was, from a couple of us from the public lands program. We donate 1% of our revenue for 1% for the planet. So is
Hmm.
managing that to all the organizations that we support there.
Hmm.
Um, and basically we have a mission for the impact team and my team. Our mission is we want to protect trails and protect the
Hmm.
spaces that we love to recreate. We want to make sure we help people safely get outside. That's our
Hmm.
second mission, our second pillar. And then we want to protect the planet. Like, we
Yeah.
want to do as little harm as possible, and this is in climate change. We see, in that sense, we see a lot of ways that we can help there with data to help
Hmm.
with, wildfire, and, helping to slow down, acts like that by
Yeah.
education and research and everything else to help mitigate some of that. So the impact team was formed and
Cool.
involved, which is great. We can be a little bit more strategic, but ultimately we're helping the land managers, we're helping our members and our users get, you know, better educated on the issues that maybe they want to be involved in, be a
Hmm.
support and kind of build those stewards up and figure out ways to protect, to share responsible recreation and leave no trace principles with them. And then also taking the great power that we have through our data and kind of insights that we have to help share those to move policy, move move action in the right direction.
Yeah. One of my favorite things to do is tie different things from different interviews together. And one thing that's coming to mind is I just released an episode with Joe from Trail Crew Stories, if you're familiar with Trail Crew Stories.
Hmm.
And he was talking about like when they're building a trail, they're really like one of the principles is positive and negative control points. Positive control points are like when you want to go to a certain site, like in Yosemite, people want to go to, I think it's Nevada Falls. And so, like, you want to build a trail to that because people are going to find a way to get there regardless. But then there's negative control points where you're actually building the trail in a way to make sure people don't go to a certain area. And I think that's where, like, AllTrails data is probably so helpful for land managers because you could be like, wow, like this area is dangerous or this area has like a species or endangered species we're trying to better protect. And people seem to keep like going off trail on that area. Like, how do we fix that? Or, wow, all the comments are saying there's like a ton of fallen logs and like it kind of can bump that up in priority from a trail crew management perspective. So I just think I just was so in awe when I learned about the All Trails Public Lands program because I've been in this public lands world for the past, I don't know, year and a half doing this podcast, working at it from like not necessarily working in it, but working alongside a lot of different people. So yeah, I think it's really cool to be able to leverage the data that you all have for the betterment of like managing the land in a better way. So I think it's really cool.
Yeah, and like I said, I think the important part here is, and the only reason we're able to do it is because we have such a large user base, and
Yeah.
are able to do that, and we're lucky in that sense as the company continues to grow and again people continue to get outside. We did a with the public lands program now being just a couple of years old, we have done some case studies around that, and we're
Mm,
seeing the impacts, which is really cool. And a couple examples of that, and people can read more about the public lands program at publiclands.alltrails.com and see some of these case studies. But a couple that we really just I'd love to talk about. One
yeah.
is, Olympic National Park started to use the public lands program early on, and the hard part for us is like the bandwidth, right? These rangers and public land managers really don't have the time to be spending a whole lot of time updating trails on all trails
Right.
all the time. And we
Right.
don't make any ask or say, hey, this is just a tool to use if you're available and you have the bandwidth for it.
Yeah.
Well, they decided, hey, let's focus on these 6 trails that are kind of our hotspots where we see a lot of search and rescue, and we are going to spend
Mm,
the summer making sure we update closures and warnings and conditions reports on all trails for that. So they took these 6 trails, they spent the entire summer, like I think they made a total of, I want to say like 30 alerts through the
that's
summer
great.
on these
Yeah.
6 trails, right? Of this like, hey, conditions, don't wear flip flops, it snowed, whatever they needed to communicate
Yeah.
to the public. the cool thing about it is we got through that summer and that busy season. And again, not we can't take full credit for this because I'm sure they also had people on the ground doing it and they had signage, but it was just another tool to help support that. But they saw a 66% decrease in search
Wow.
and rescue missions on those trails that summer,
Wow.
which is great, right? If we can be a tool to help drive that
Reduce
kind of number,
incidents. Yeah.
so great. That's the point, right? Like, let's communicate to the public. Let's use that as a lever. Another one we'd worked on with national parks specifically is a little bit unique because it wasn't a total, just like direct public lands program, log in and set alerts. But we were talking to Zion National Park, and if you got onto Angel's Landing on AllTrails a few years ago, you would have noticed that the comments section of the Zion's Land or the Angel's Landing trail was just becoming a marketplace for people to trade permits and try to get
Oh,
on permits for
wow.
that because it's a lottery system to get
Yeah.
that, and so everybody like every comment was just like, I have a permit for this, or I'm going to be here this day. Who's got an open spot? And it was like,
Yeah.
it wasn't helpful because then nobody was getting comments on reports or what
Yeah.
conditions were like and whatnot. So Zion reached out and they said, hey, can you do something to mitigate this? Yeah. Plus, they're like, actually, these aren't transferable. So it's like against the law to like transfer permits once you
Yeah.
get them. So they're like, we don't want people breaking the law either. So we said, great, we'll work with our moderation team because we get all kinds of comments, whether spam comments or whatever. And we have a great moderation team that clears those out and everything else. And they said, we can set this up so that anybody trying to trade a permit it doesn't show up in the comments. And
Yeah.
so worked on it. It was great. Really solved a lot of headaches for the rangers on the
Yeah.
ground in Zion. So we took care of that. So it really reduced the time of people showing up, getting off the shuttle at that trailhead and saying like, oh, like, yeah, that's not my name. I got it off of some person that I met on
Yeah.
AllTrails that,
Yeah.
and the ranger having to be there be like, that's
That doesn't
too
work.
bad. It doesn't
Yeah.
work. So you can't go up there. And
Yeah.
and then just that overall experience, that person has a terrible park experience, and then they're just complaining about how Zion is the worst because they,
Yeah.
whatever, and the ranger has a bad experience. So it's like, all right, how can we mitigate that and make sure everybody has the best experience outdoors? Again, and that's kind of the point of like the role I have and my team has is we're here to like help solve those problems. It's
Yeah.
unique. Some of them are unique to one park. Some of them we can apply across all different public lands partners, but it just takes time to like have a conversation, dive into it, seek a solution, and make a good decision and try it out. And we're seeing a lot of success with that with
Yeah.
the public lands program, which is really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I appreciate you sharing the wins or some of the many specific wins with that. Yeah, thank you kind of as we wrap up for your time. I've loved hearing about I love my family goes to Park City a lot, so I love Utah as a state. And so I loved hearing about that. I loved obviously hearing about AllTrails and just your love and stoke for the outdoors and just getting people outside, kind of as a fun way to end it. Do you have a favorite snack for these pit ventures?
I have yes. I love day old pizza, cold day old pizza.
Mm,
So if we had pizza last night, I'd love to throw a slice in the backpack and enjoy that out on adventure. It's great. And what we affectionately call SPKs or Sour Patch Kids.
I
Like
love that nickname,
yeah.
SPK.
Yep. SPKs are like a go-to in the pack all the time, no matter what adventure I'm on, whether it's backcountry skiing, kayaking, hiking. They're popular. Everybody eats them.
Yeah,
Like they're easy to share. Everything else.
yeah.
So those are my go-to. Really,
Oh
really
yeah.
healthy trail food. But
As it goes. I mean, my favorite snacks more recent. It's always changing, but my most recent one is nerd clusters.
oh yeah,
So,
good choice for sure.
yeah. Also not healthy at all, but it's like like every time I go camping, I'm like, well, it's kind of a staple. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't feel like a camping trip without nerd clusters.
And sometimes like you got to push through and you got to find you're kind of you may be out there and you're like, what am I doing out here? And Sour Patch Kid just helps morale.
Yeah, well,
It's
isn't
just
that
it's great.
commercial? It's like sour then sweet. So it turns your moods
It
from
does.
sour to sweet.
It does.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Pitt. This has been really fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. I encourage anybody that wants to learn more about our impact program or the public lands program to reach out to us. You can find some information on the All Trails website. But yeah, any way we can help support, and anybody that has a good adventure or an idea for, helping our public lands, especially in this time, reach out to us.
Yeah.
We'd love to talk about it.
Heck yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Pitt.
All right, thank you.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening today. If you like this podcast, please share the word. Who Runs This Park's success relies on you rating, reviewing, and sharing the word about the podcast with your friends. If you have an idea for someone you want me to interview for this new segment, send me an email at maddie@whorunsThisPark.com or DM me on Instagram @whorunsThisPark, and we'll make it happen. Thanks again. So thankful for listeners like you. See you next week.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No